Hello everyone, welcome back to Candid Conversations with Caroline and Chris. We took a small, quick hiatus, but we're back and we're quite excited to showcase some of our content and just get back to it. What you been up to?
I've been practicing more, and I love it. So it's taken quite most of my time, and I think just adjusting to it, and of course work-life balance, social life, being a mom, the whole thing.
Amazing. I can only imagine like having to handle all those things and still be able to do what you need to do. So we're happy, we're excited that to be back and to just keep the content going. So without taking any more time, today I wanted us to talk about a very interesting topic. The first thing I wanted us to just get back to and discuss, which is something I've seen that has been going on a lot. The first thing we need to consider is masculinity and vulnerability. So this conversation started from the idea of, like, can a man be friends with his wife or with a woman? Basically, it was just a simple
Like
conversation,
partner
sort of relationship, and also just platonically, like just generally. And that idea of vulnerability, how do they now eventually become open enough with issues of masculinity and men? So there's a video I saw online that was speaking about that, and it's asking, like, can men truly be vulnerable? Can they really expose themselves to the point of feeling open, safe spaces? You know, we've had that conversation a lot. So maybe we could start from there. What do you think?
First, we'd like to understand what maybe vulnerability is, masculinity, as we, because I've also noticed that we've used these terms everywhere, but if you'd ask somebody randomly to explain what it means, they would possibly not know what it means, right? So being vulnerable, what does that mean? So it's basically being in a situation where, or putting yourself in a situation where you're risking getting hurt or experiencing pain. As for masculinity, maybe I would Google that and check what it says.
Yeah, because right now masculinity is being used
Everywhere.
everywhere. Everyone is saying they understand. You know, the bloggers, we're seeing a lot of content on Instagram and social media about what masculinity should be. What is the definition actually?
It's qualities or attributes regarded as characteristics of men or boys. Manliness, virility. Yeah.
So characteristics that are considered to be masculine. To be manly. That's still quite vague. But from your own understanding, Caroline, what do you think would you define as masculinity? Maybe from a woman's perspective.
From a woman's perspective, that would be someone who protects, provides, someone who's progressive. You know, like I'm assuming in a situation, or rather not assuming, but picturing, this is a pack of wolves. You know, the alpha wolf at the front. Yeah, that's how I describe it.
And then brings us to the main issue of there is masculinity, but there is toxic masculinity also.
Yes.
Right? So we can speak about that idea of being angry all the time. I remember you mentioned about that conversation on that ideally there are several emotions, but
up to 10.
Up to 10, but
or more.
Guys end up feeling anger as the main emotion most of the time.
Yeah, I think from our socialization, because also when you dig deep into it, masculinity is a social construct. Like it's okay for a man to show up a certain way, but some snippets of it are a social construct. So when it comes to emotions, the dictionary or the vocabulary is limited to anger. Like this other joy, toughness, pain, hakuna. No, unalia nini? Machozi ya mwanaume inaenda kwa tu.
What? Yeah. It goes down. Or it doesn't come out. I've never had that one.
Yeah, they say that. Inaenda kwa tumbo. So it's very limited. So it's limited to maybe anger. Because also anger has some sense of,
well,
it's
toughness,
macho.
and it's macho, and it's what's considered strong.
Yeah.
So when you look at the traits, now that we've discussed definition, and we're maybe digging deeper into those traits, what would you say are some of the key, let's say, um, characteristics of a very masculine male figure, maybe?
Key. I think I would still stick to those, like leading,
Protecting,
protecting the
providing.
park, providing for the park,
Mhm.
a sense of security, and not only physically, even emotionally. There's a lot of responsibility put on that tag. There's a lot of responsibility put on that tag.
We've spoken about those traits: providing, protecting,
a progressive
preceding,
mind.
progressive mind.
Yeah.
Those are some of the common, descriptions that we give for masculinity.
Yeah.
So when we talk about now vulnerability, bringing vulnerability into those traits, it's seen as not ideal, and not something that is seen to be masculine, or it's not something that is ideal. But let's have that conversation now and ask ourselves, does that mean that vulnerability as a trait that defines masculinity isn't ideal, and how do you feel it should be expressed?
I don't think it's not ideal. I think it's how we've been raised and how we've been conditioned. Because and I've probably said this in maybe one episode before, that when we raise children and maybe lock them in a room, a boy and a girl, how they express themselves emotionally, how they feel, would not be so different because of their gender, until they get to around 9, when they start realizing when ni kijana, when ni msichana. So that's when the differences come in. But ideally, and also we are not, even as women, we're also not able to handle it. Like if you broke down right now and started crying, as a woman, I'd be like, oh, okay, now what? Where do we go from
What's
here?
happening to the protector and the provider?
What do we do? Something. We need to get it checked. Something is wrong. We don't know what to do. Right? We don't know what would you say about it?
Because there's that conversation I saw, like, are women taught how to handle vulnerability?
No.
At what point do you now, when this person who is your provider, your protector, all that, they're still human, and they break down and they start feeling sad, and they feel anxious, overwhelmed. At that point in time, two things are happening, right? One is exposing themselves, the other one is completely shutting themselves up, because ideally they're not supposed to expose any of that at any point. So based on that idea, from a woman's perspective, so if I started breaking down, for example, and quote unquote, this is even just, not even your husband, just a friend, what do you think should be the response from the lady?
I think this person should be handled as a human being, irrespective of gender. This person should be taken as a human being and handled as, what would you do to any other human being, without the labels of a man should not, without all that socialization. What would you do? You'd offer empathy, you'd offer kindness, you'd be considerate. That's an ideal situation. But sadly, we do not live in such a world. So even when we talk about men and masculinity, we are supposed to unlearn and relearn, all of us, not only for the men. Because we'll talk about men being vulnerable, but are we as women working towards handling a man who can show up in his vulnerability?
Isn't it weakness? Or that is still already a societal...
What makes you think it's a weakness as a man?
If I expose myself, how does that solve my problem? How does that make it easier for me in any way? Because there's an element of fear, and how can the same leader have traits that show as if they're not strong, and yet that is what is expected of us? So when I expose myself so much to a lady, how will she view me later on when I go back to bringing those traits of protecting, providing? Because that is the fear that we have. Like, how do I get to a point like I can still do both? and still be respected and still feel like I still have sort of my authority. So I feel like that also is usually the main issue. What do you think about that generally as we conclude on the issue of vulnerability?
So I'll answer that with a question, right? You work out, then you're at the gym, and then you get a sprain. You can't walk, and whoever is available to help you is a woman. Isn't that a state of vulnerability for you? Ulikuwa unainua weights 100, whatever, then you get a sprain, and the nurse who can help you is a woman.
But yeah, that would
It's
be
physical.
Yeah,
it's physical, right?
But now I'm speaking like emotionally and like deep down I have some issues that I want to express myself on, you know.
But you're still vulnerable.
Yes.
It means that if somebody wanted to attack you in that point in time, this lady nurse is more placed to protect you than you're not able to. So how about you look at it from that angle?
That you just need help.
Yeah, and it's okay. And it's temporary.
And because it's a woman, it shouldn't, that seeking help doesn't change.
Yeah.
It's just that we view it from completely different
that's why I've given it a physical example and something that you relate to, something that you do often. And also something that's very important to note is that vulnerability, it helps grow empathy, it helps grow intimacy and trust. And these are very, key components in any healthy relationship. And by relationship, I'm not limiting it to only romantic relationship. No, even in platonic relationships. Because if you've been in any form of a relationship where there was no trust, there was no empathy, it's very empty. You can't trust the other person. So there are limits up to where you can relate with this person. There are limits up to how you can open up yourself to this person. So what's the quality of that relationship? So that means if you limit your mind to I am being weak, it means there's some depth of that relationship that you're
missing.
Not gonna enjoy. But
also, it's gonna be a bit shallow.
Very shallow.
And
then remember our definition for vulnerability. You're exposing yourself to possible pain.
Yeah.
So everything is a risk. Nikuwekelea bet. So the chances of you also getting hurt are also high. But then again,
chances of you feeling
high risk,
and beauty and a strong relationship also come in.
Yes, high risk, high reward, so balance.
So it's really up to you at the end of the day how far you're willing to take, and also at the same time, I think you should also be careful with
cautious. You should be cautious
with
because
who you give that.
You cannot be vulnerable to it.
It's a bit of power as well, right?
There's
a power play.
There's some sense of power play.
I'm exposing myself to someone who can use this against me at some point.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what we're mostly afraid of. Yeah. When you want to cry again, call some other girl or something. So it's usually very tricky. But I know those watching us, if you have feedback on the comments, please share with us what are your thoughts on masculinity and vulnerability. I am still a bit skeptical as much as Caroline thinks we should open up. I'm still
have you ever tried?
Maybe not today. Maybe some other day, but not today. Because I feel like that is still a very tricky aspect to think about. And then also how we've been raised, how we've been socialized. It's really deep-rooted in how we view things.
Yeah, true. And of course, as Africans, it makes it worse. There's something I wanted to mention other than, what vulnerability does to you in regard to empathy, trust, and intimacy. Something else also, it contributes to how we solve conflicts.
Yes. For
example, because of you not wanting to show up a certain way, for you not, meaning if your range of emotions are limited to only anger, and they don't go past that, how are you even able to allow this other person in? You see, it limits you.
Yes.
So then, again, when it comes to even solving conflicts, for us to solve conflicts in a very healthy, functional way, we both need to be vulnerable as well. So what happens if you're not vulnerable? Chances are you will do something we call stonewalling. You meet a wall.
Yeah.
So what happens? Conflict ukiona inakuja hivi
you escape, you evade.
Yeah, so you can literally walk away physically or emotionally check out. So you're
there
at me and
you're
I'm there talking, and then you're like, I'm sorry, I will not repeat that. But you didn't even get to the depth. It's hard for you to even hear and listen to the other person.
Yes.
That's one thing. The other one, you live when you live physically, what does that do to the other person? they feel hurt, they feel not hurt. So when you look at it, even in not only the aspect of you getting help, also it affects your relationship in regard to even conflict solving.
Yes.
And how you look at things, because we both require to get to a certain level of vulnerability together. We don't have to have like the same percent. I might be more vulnerable because I'm a woman and we've been socialized differently, but some level of vulnerability also allows me to feel safe, because you remember, protector, provider ulimi imeharibu. Protector, provider, all those things. So for me to feel safe, you have to also show some level of vulnerability. That's why it's a tricky balance. There are paradoxes. It's a show of weakness, quote unquote, but also a show of strength.
Of strength.
Yes, and provide space for that.
For openness.
Yeah.
Because even trying to build each other, and I'm working with something that isn't you. What you have portrayed and the face that you're showing,
the facade, yeah,
it's a mask. So I'm working with a totally different person, as opposed to who you really are, who I should be working on directly.
Yeah.
So, and then you're wondering why this other person doesn't even know you, because you've shown them.
Yeah. So I'm not working with the real person.
That's deep.
And for you, yeah, exactly. That's why we say that you're operating from a very shallow point, and there are depths of the relationship that you'll never experience.
You'll never get to.
Yes. Again, not only limited to romantic relationships,
yes,
even platonic relationships,
even with your friends.
Yes, in whatever capacity.
If we even start speaking about vulnerability among men, even right now, that is a conversation that can even take 2 hours.
We need a guy.
We need guys.
Or two.
I think I'm gonna get some few guys on the show. We just sit down and just speak a bit about vulnerability, because I feel like sometimes guys are going through so much, but the conversations we have as guys is, Manchester United, Arsenal,
and even if you get vulnerable, utaanza kuambia Chris is on the
Hey, what's up, bro?
Are
you okay? Take a
and
shot, man.
Take
a shot. What's good? Like it's and I feel like we're moving away from that, and yet that used to be where we connected, we bonded. Even if you look at traditional African society, during stages like circumcision, men used to come down and speak about deep conversations, and they were vulnerable. They were opening up. And then, the beauty of it is, if you don't do it, at some point something breaks
inside of you,
because you're constantly living a lie.
And then you get home, you put the mask down,
and then you cry to the stomach. I like
that. Goes back to the stomach.
You cry and the tears are just filling your stomach, and you're just hurting. So basically, in conclusion, the more authentic you are, the better your relationships,
the better the quality of your relationship,
of your life.
Yeah. From
your friends to your family to your colleagues,
everyone at large.
But it also means we should take some very big introspection and look inside and really take time to understand what that is.
Yeah, it has a ripple effect, because for me to be that vulnerable to you as a friend, for me to be that vulnerable to you as a spouse, for me to, in whatever capacity, it means I have to do a lot of, I have to be very thorough. I have to pick people, like this, hand pick. See, not the whole crew.
Yes.
I have to hand pick. So that's why at the end of it, the quality of your life is
good.
Yes.
Because you select the ones that are for you, and they show you the same kind of regard by being vulnerable and exposing themselves as well. So it builds and connects even more.
Yes.
Amazing. All right. So those are the thoughts for today. We are very, very excited to get back, and we would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are your comments regarding vulnerability, masculinity? What do the guys have to say about being exposed to each other and opening up about the real issues that we face? And society has decided to make that is not a norm. But we want to just say that if you want to be authentic in your relationships, if you want to improve on them, show us who you really are. Expose yourself regardless of the pain that may come with it, but the joy and the beauty of life that will be associated with it as well will be amazing. So we wish you well. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you so much.